Uber hires hackers, Twitter wants to be a tiny bit more diverse, and Georgia Dow from iMore is here to talk about what parents need to know about social media. Tech News Tonight is next.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Tonight, episode 413 for Friday, August 28th, 2015. This episode of Tech News Tonight is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. With one simple integration, you can offer your customers every way to pay. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/technight. Welcome. I am Megan Morrone. Our guest tonight is Georgia Dow, senior editor at iMore. Georgia is also a psychotherapist, a writer, a podcaster. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. So after the break, we're going to talk about whether those viral videos that we always see about child predators are real or not, and whether we should be very afraid or just a little bit afraid. But first, let's get to the tech news. Remember those security researchers that frightened the pants off of all of us a few weeks ago when they demonstrated their ability to hack a Jeep? It was a dangerous stunt that got my attention, as well as the attention of Uber, who hired both of the hackers. Reuters reports that Uber just hired Charlie Miller and Chris Velasek. They will work at the company's Advanced Technologies Center, a research laboratory devoted to self-driving car technology. What do you think about this, Georgia?
Well, I think that it's a really smart move, if just from the psychology of getting a lot of press involved in what Uber is doing. And also, if you're going to be dealing with self-driving cars, these are cars that are going to have a lot of sensors and a lot of areas that will be open to hackers. So to be able to find out how to make this the most secure car that you can while being self-driving at the same time, I think that it's good to hire the people that were the first ones to hack a car without even having physical access to that car.
Yeah, this is the same department. Uber has gotten in a little bit of trouble. They poached all these Carnegie Mellon robot researchers, kind of left the whole department bare. But I mean, it's what you're saying is true. If we want to have self-driving cars, we want them to be safe. So.
Yeah. And that's what we're all talking about in the news. So if you're going to be releasing, which it makes a lot of sense for Uber to want to have self-driving cars, but you want to make sure that the cars are safe, because what's the use in having them if they're not?
Right, exactly. So do you know a lot about Miller or Velasek? I know Miller was at Twitter and Velasek was a security firm. Have you heard much about them besides when they were in the news a few weeks ago?
Not really. I know that they've been doing this and they've been working upon this for a long time. I don't know if they're the best people to actually develop cars that are going to be safer. I think that they're the best people definitely to test out whatever the areas of security that might be open to hackers in the first place. So I think that it's a good idea. Good press, good idea, and then they're going to have a whole bunch. Uber has enough money to be able to hire a lot of people to make sure that they're going to be going full force ahead at making cars that are going to be self-driving and safe at the same time. And I think that it's going to be a huge area open to people. Who doesn't want to have a car that's going to be you can take a nap and your car gets you to work?
I'm in support of that. And yeah, there's no arguing that the self-driving car will be less distracted than a person driving a car, just safer. But then, yeah, there is this, this idea of, wow, there's a lot of things you could hack to not be safe.
Right.
So, like I said, one of these researchers was from Twitter, and he just left, which leaves them with one less white man working for Twitter. Today, Twitter released their diversity goals. I think they were probably hoping for some really good PR for themselves, but unfortunately, their diversity goals are very modest, and the PR they got from this post was not so great. What do you think of their diversity goals, Georgia?
Well, I'm happy that they actually put in actual numbers and they're going forward. I think that people were really hard. It's a percentage, so it's a really small amount. I think it's like less than 40 women that they have to hit to make the goal to be able to reach it, which is small. But I think that if you're just you're making the attempts to go forward to make things better. Again, we're having to deal with sand in the hourglass. More sand is better than less sand, and they're going at full sets of diversity. So it's not just women. There's also people of color. There's people in different areas of fields. There's the LGBT community. They're going all around with that. And at least Twitter had the guts to put it down in numbers and to actually not just say that this is what we'd like. Everyone says, oh, yes, we would love more diversity. But Twitter actually said, this is how we're going to go about doing it. And this is by the timeline of that we want to achieve it. So I think people were hard on it on Twitter because of that, because it's not enough. But I think that at least they're getting the press to it. And then more companies are going to follow suit saying, you know what? This is something really important to people. We need to do more of this.
Yeah, a lot of companies have released their diversity statistics, but I think Pinterest might have been the only other company that released goals. So yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And Twitter's saying how we actually have a plan of how we're going to do it, because it's great to say goals and it's great to say what the stats are now, but what are you going to do to change that? And so Twitter has a concrete plan of areas that they're going to be dealing with. They're actually going ahead with working towards it. And so I don't know, my hats are off to Twitter for doing something in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's not just. I mean, it's the whole culture, and it is changing. But it's women and minorities. How what are we teaching? What are we teaching in school? What is the media saying? So it starts so much earlier. All of this stuff does. It's not just about who they hire tomorrow.
Right, and it just gets us talking about it. I think that us discussing issues of why is this important does make a difference in the entire culture of it. We never used to speak about diversity. It wasn't even a thought process. And now we're thinking, oh, actually, it makes a lot of sense, because when you grow up, you decide what you can be depending on what you see. We're mimics by nature. We do what we see and how we learn. It's not what other people say. So it's like the biggest parenting thing is, it doesn't matter what you say to your children. It matters what you do. If you don't want your children to smoke, the best way to do that is not to smoke yourself. You can talk until you're blue in the face. So when you see people in different various roles, you say, you know what, I could as well. And so that's why diversity is so important on many different schemes besides just the output that your company puts out.
Exactly. So on to another story. Reuters reports that Apple and Boeing are teaming up with the Pentagon to create military wearables. The newly announced Flex Tech Alliance is a group of 162 companies and universities, including Apple, Boeing, and Harvard University. I don't think they're talking about Apple Watches here for the military. They're calling them flexible hybrid electronics. What do you think about all this?
Oh, I think it's a smart move from Apple. It's not very, Steve Jobs, but I think it's a brilliant move. The military budget is huge. I think that the spending this year is like $600 billion in military spending. So there's a lot of money there. And I think that Apple does a great job in creating great and safe products. So for the military, that's also good, because their products have less of a chance of being hacked, because they really do spend a lot of time making sure that they have good encryption on them. I also love the idea of having like these great, you'll be able to know what, if an engine's overheating or if something's been hit, or to be able to protect things. So I love the idea of having flexible hardware. And I think that a lot of technology that goes into the military ends up giving us a trickle-down effect of we get better technology as well.
So Apple hasn't really worked with the government that much. I mean, there was an article in Politico today talking about how interesting it was that Tim Cook was really willing to work with the government, whereas Steve Jobs wasn't traditionally.
Right. Well, there's such a huge budget that the military puts out to that, and I think it's really interesting because we have a lot of talks with Apple and the government with Eric Holder and stuff where it was mostly about how is encryption bad or good, and what should Apple's phones be so secure. And it's kind of interesting. It goes back to that thing of, what someone really believes by, what they actually do with their information, not really what they say. And so, I know that Eric Holder, when he was working for the government, he was saying how, your phones should not be as encrypted. You should allow the government to be able to, go through the privacy of your phones in order to protect people. Yet he does use an iPhone. So I'm like, okay.
So Mac Rumors and 9 to 5 Mac are both reporting that Apple will retire its one-to-one training programs next month, according to a memo sent to employees. Now, this was the $99 a year. It was a subscription program where you could get one-on-one help. It began back in 2007. Do you know much about this program?
Yeah, it's a wonderful program. It comes down, you would end up being able to, so you buy a new product and then you could, like, it comes down and you could once a week, you could go in for 30 minutes to an hour, and you would have one-on-one service to be able to be trained in, different Mac products, how you can use them. And I think that it was really important for, people that are new to a technology or might be exceptionally shy. And so I know that Serenity Caldwell, who works for iMore as well, she used to actually do this with people. And it's a wonderful program for people that have a little bit of an aversion to technology or like to learn by seeing someone instead of watching a video. You can ask personalized questions. They're replacing it with groups. So it's not that they're getting rid of being able to train people. You can still go to the Apple Store and get group training for things. But a lot of people, are shy about asking questions in a large group situation. If you don't know how to use the trackpad on your Mac, are you going to feel comfortable to ask about that if you see everyone else being able to use it properly?
Yeah, I mean, they said that people weren't really using it so much. And I guess there's so much more available on the internet now. I mean, so much of that stuff, so much what you do, so much of what we do. It also got me thinking about, which generations have grown up with technology. My parents are, their generation, I mean, they didn't grow up with Macs, but I mean, they had them since, I was young, since they were in their 30s, so there are fewer and fewer people who just have had no experience with technology in the United States or, in the Western world.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about how easy Macs are, and I think that Apple offers a lot of different programs to be able to teach people, even just by searching through the internet. But it still makes me a little bit sad to say, goodbye to this really wonderful program, even if it helps out a few people. I think that it's beneficial, and if you're dealing with social anxiety, or if you don't like groups, or if you have an aversion to technology, or if you're a new Mac user, it's much different having someone actually go through with you and saying, what, you're doing this, or you move the mouse to this side. So it's a little bit bittersweet for me, but I do understand that the economics to it ended up, if you used it every single week, it would be, dollars per hour of work, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and the stores are really packed as it is. So it's probably not the most economical of services that Apple offered. But I still think that it was a pretty good one.
Well, coming up, Georgia and I are going to talk about what all those child predator viral videos are getting wrong. But first, this episode is brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're a mobile app developer, take a look at Braintree. They are the payment solution used by companies like Uber, Airbnb, Hotel Tonight, Living Social, and Munchery. Braintree scaled with these companies from early stage startups to the successful companies they are today. Braintree can scale with your business too. Braintree has made the payment experience in these apps seamless and magical, and you can add a similar experience to your own app. With excellent customer service and simple integration, Braintree gets you ready to receive payments quickly. And Braintree's continuous support plus fast payouts means you'll be prepared as your company grows from your first dollar to your billionth. Braintree is also helping to solve the problem of mobile cart abandonment by offering a best-in-class mobile checkout experience. Braintree gives you a full-stack payment solution, support for all payment types your customers might want, so start accepting PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, and whatever's next, all across with a single integration across all platforms. With superior fraud protection, customer service, and fast payouts. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/technight. So earlier this month, the YouTuber Kobe Person posted a video on YouTube with one of those clickbaity headlines saying, "Watch how these girls almost get attacked by someone they met on social media." Many people posted this on Facebook. I did not watch the video when it first came out. Did you watch it, Georgia?
Watch the video when it first came out as well.
You did watch it. What were your first impressions when you saw it?
Well, my first impression, I think, was a similar impression to what most people got and said, wow, watch these poor girls and how scary it is that, girls can be just, brought in through this. And then after a while of watching it, I was like, wait a second. There's certain dynamics of the psychology of what's happening with these parents that seems a little bit off to me. Like there's one scene in the video where the parents are actually wearing masks in the van and they're really doing their best to scare the bejesus out of their daughter, but the manner in which they're speaking to their child seems just so non-fluid. And even the daughter's reaction seemed a little bit non-fluid, and that's the scene right there, really, really frightening as they're grabbing their child. And I'm like, it just reeked that this was a little bit more staged than what I felt comfortable with.
Yeah, it felt a little staged. It also, if it wasn't staged, it was scary. I mean, I don't want to judge parents, but there's two dads and then a mom and a dad, and they all really just yell at their child, which of course I think I probably would too. I mean, that's what I do when I see my kids do something dangerous, not wear their helmet. Like, that's your first instinct to scream at them. I get that.
Yes.
But to put them, I mean, these parents, so the parents, this guy went out, he went to Craigslist, he posted like public service announcement, need your help. And then people responded. He paid the participants, which is not traditionally what you do in journalism. I wouldn't call this traditional journalism necessarily, but I think it's presented to people much like, something like To Catch a Predator, that show was, where it's just this guy on his own. So he paid them. He also did a lot of, he turned down a lot of people that he didn't think would fall for it.
Right.
And that's what struck me, because I do think to say, all kids are vulnerable to this. Every kid should never talk to anyone on the internet that they've never met. I think that's a dangerous thing to say.
Yeah, it goes a little bit too far. I think that the internet is a place where you have to be wary and you have to be paying attention to what your children are doing. But they never really go through the statistics of how many girls said no to this versus, how many fell for it. Like, this was no doubt set up to be a viral video so that people would be shocked and awe. I like the fact that it gets people talking about what is your child doing on technology. I think that parents need to have a responsibility to that. And I think that, it's the same thing of watching videos of a man, with a cute little puppy that was lost, and they send the picture and then they try to, lure a child. I don't think that the internet is any more inherently dangerous than any other place in the world. We need to be educated upon it. But I think that this video was made to be a viral video, was not to be made to be educational. And so because of that, it was exceptionally fear-based, which I fully understand being a viral video, because fear sells. We're scared. We're going to give up our rights. We'll give up our money. We'll give up our freedom. That's what happens to us when we have a strongly limbic reaction. Our primal part of our brain kind of takes over and we just react. But that's not our analytical part of the brain is what should be making most of the higher functioning, decisions. And so I think that just saying, your child should never be on the internet is going too far, or that everyone is dangerous or every scenario is dangerous. We need to have a better discussion on what is safe and what isn't safe and what is appropriate and what is inappropriate on the net.
And I wonder, that limbic response, that, fight or flight, I am wondering, I have no scientific research to back this up or anything, but I'm wondering if that flight instinct is what causes some parents to just say, I'm not going to look at all. Like, give my child a phone and it is way too scary. I just won't think again about what they're doing or who they're talking to because I'm so frightened.
Yeah, I think so. I think that sometimes it's also, it's hard. It's very, very difficult. It's exhausting. We don't know how to do it better. Kids are often especially this generation, they've been born through with technology. So oftentimes it is, we think that we have, whatever privacy is, and the children just know, their young adults know how to, undermine that or sneak that or get around it. And I don't know if more control is actually the better way to this than education and finding out what are your rights and teaching kids to respect boundaries and to be able to read what are red flags and what is appropriate and what wouldn't be appropriate, and to be able to be strong enough to stand up for themselves.
Right. So teaching your kids, talking to them is more important than just constantly checking their phone or telling them never to be on social media, which is not practical at all.
No, and it's not going to work. You're going to end up with a child that's going to become exceptionally rebellious because of that. You want to be able to make, clear boundaries of what you expect and what you don't expect. And then you want to give your child the respect of seeing how do they use their media and what happens to that. So, also, age appropriate activities. I wouldn't want my child, to be able to be on, dealing with social networks where they're going to be talking to anyone, if they're at an exceptionally young age, or if I think that they're very vulnerable to, dealing with certain sets of people, you want to make sure that they're protected to that. So I think that parents need to be involved in looking at, what do their children do? I think that, for younger children, my kids don't have, they're both like 10 and 6. So there's, a computer that's in a public area where we can all see, we know what they're doing, we ask them about it and have that dialogue. What's happening, what isn't happening, how do you feel about it? What would you do if someone, that you didn't know sent you a request to become a friend or sent you an email?
Well, it's really interesting because the age really does matter, and the kid matters. These three girls, I think, were 12, 13, and 14. And there is that, I have a 12-year-old, and there is this sort of cliff at 13, because at 13 is when it becomes legal for kids to be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. That's basically the age. So that's where it becomes, you can rely on the law, or the terms of service for all these programs for only so long, whereas then you have to have your own, like, how do we feel about it? Do we think that you can be on these sites and, talking about it, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
So a lot of people are also really upset in the past few weeks about Windows 10. It has a feature. They've always had parental controls, but there is a default feature in Windows 10 that automatically emails you a report of what your kids are doing online. There was, I think this was first on Boing Boing posted, someone just got it and said, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know where my teenager, I think it was a teenager they were dealing with. What do you think about just relying on the operating system to tell you what your kids are doing?
This to me is like many levels of wrong to me. This sets off so many red flags. It's, you shouldn't be, I think that there's already a problem if you have to snoop on your child, period. There's an issue. You need to deal with it. It could be a trust issue. It could be that, they're doing the wrong thing. But in this case, this isn't even you have chosen to snoop upon your child. This is that if you're set up to the, family set on Windows 10, without requesting to you, you have to opt out to this. It is going to send you a detailed dossier of, how many hours your child spent on the computer, what websites they went to, what were they doing with that, what applications they were using. And it gets emailed to you without even your knowledge. So the child, your, young adult or even your teenager does not know, and neither do you. And I think that, that causes so many problems. What happens if your child has, is trying to figure out if they are gay or if they are not? What happens if you come from a very religious upbringing? What happens if, you need to go for a medical procedure and you need to ask questions to that? I think that it's really kind of, it's a privacy nightmare, but it's also a huge issue for families. And that I think that the person that is supposed to decide what rules happen in the house of a family should not be the operating system of your computer. It should be the parent. And so that they even thought to set this up without having the parents opt into this, I don't know what they were thinking when they set that up. I really would never want to know. That's just, to me, it seems wrong. Now, again, if your child is 6 or 7, that's a different story to it. But, once your child becomes a teenager, you also want to be able to give them those rights and responsibilities. So, to have your operating system be the rule maker to, the police system of what they do online, it's just exceptionally wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Obviously, we always had the opportunity to look at our, web history to see what our children have been looking at. We have the ability to look at Netflix history and see what they've been watching. If you share if you share an iOS, you have a family plan there, often like their pictures. If you share an iCloud account, your children's pictures will automatically upload. So there are a lot of things that happen like this that I think are good until your child gets to be a certain age, and then maybe you want to give them their own iTunes account.
Yeah, and it's not, in that case, you're actively going to take a look at that. It's not being emailed to you, which seems, I think that it destroys trust. I think that it imbues fear, and I think that it's a destruction of trust between the parent-child relationship. And I think that it also, it's a really interesting cultural phenomenon of what is considered private and what does a child have the right to be able to explore and what they don't have a right to be able to explore. And so it almost sets off this cultural feeling of nothing is private and you shouldn't expect that. If ever a parent comes to me and says, I read my child's diary, the first thing that I say is, you can't do that. That is not appropriate. And I understand that a lot of parents would, but if you've given them a diary, they have the expectation of what they do there is private and to be able to express themselves. And I understand that fear or the worry of saying, I think my child, there's something wrong and I want to know in order to protect them. So it's a very interesting kind of continuum of where does that point stop and at what age do you believe that your child should have the freedom to be able to search? And it wouldn't be suddenly, coming to you. You would choose to be able to, look through it if they didn't already delete their history. But, it's kind of covert and undermining. And I think that, most parents wouldn't want to know. You should know what, a young child is doing or a young teenager. But at a certain age, I think that it's up to them to be able to explore, to go to the library or learn certain facts and figures about the world. And, I understand the parents' want perhaps for this, but I think that it's also something that could be damaging at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the paper diary is a good example of take this paper diary, write what you want to write in that, as opposed to putting it anywhere on the internet, no matter how secure you think it is, because it's not going to be, taking what you would write in a diary and putting it on a Twitter account, even not using your name or, on Facebook or anything like that. I think that that's one thing that I teach my children. It doesn't matter how secure you think the information. I mean, if we learned anything from Ashley Madison, put it in your paper diary, have the conversation with your friend in your room with the door shut, not on your phone texting. Cause
you know what? I think it's so important, Megan, what you said. And I really wish more parents would truly talk to their kids. Like, the problem is that for kids and teenagers, there's a lot of hormones, which makes them very, very strong to the drive. But unfortunately, their prefrontal cortex, their frontal lobes that deal with decision making and consequences to actions have not fully developed. They don't actually fully develop until we're 24. We're quite old before we really think about all the consequences to our actions. So we can do something that we really don't think about what the consequences are. And I think you're absolutely right. More parents need to speak to their kids and know that even if you think it is secure, even if it's everything's being saved on a server somewhere and there is an administrator at some point that has access to that. So even if it is a secure site, unless it's like the two-way part encryption, either way, someone's going to be able to get through it, or there could be a hack to that, and what you leave on the internet is there forever.
I think it goes back ultimately to what you said before. Like, this is the behavior that we need to model for our children. And if we're modeling, I'm going to secretly spy on you, I'm going to lie and hide in a van with a mask on to teach you a lesson, then what we're really teaching is them it's okay to lie and be secretive and, wear a mask in a van.
And right. And what we're saying is that I don't trust you. I don't trust you. And also what you're saying as a parent is I don't trust my parenting to you. And so it doesn't mean that you want to give your children free rein. I think that that's the other side of the spectrum. You want to be able to see what you're comfortable with, but you also want to, our job as parents is not to, protect our kids from the world. It's to prepare them for the world. And, they're going to one day be out on their own, and you want to make sure that you've given them the tools to be able to survive through the internet age with an understanding of what is technology, what it can be used for, and what are the dangers to that.
So on a lighter topic, earlier we talked about Uber's big plans for self-driving cars. Google, of course, also has self-driving car technology. They have car prototypes on the road in Mountain View and in Austin with a driver still in there just in case. The Washington Post reports that among other things about self-driving technology that need a little work is their reaction to objects they don't recognize right away. Like, for example, fixed gear bicycles. Those are those bikes that are popular with hipsters, and they don't have brakes. And there are a lot of hipsters in Austin. And at stoplights, fixed gear bike riders have to kind of rotate back and forth in order to balance. There was an interesting Washington Post article today about what the self-driving car did in response to the fixed gear bike. It didn't really know what to do. There was a stop and go situation. And it didn't go, because they thought that was an object, which actually makes me feel safer about self-driving cars because they didn't go. It's one of those situations where you're at you don't really know who the right of way is, and you keep looking back. Is it you? Is it you? And it's like, that's a very human. The computer probably will set to never go.
Yes. I would get annoyed after and be like, okay, I'm going. We're going to deal with this. I think it also, it deals with one is we're probably not going to get self-driving cars as quickly as we would like to, because there's so many different things that the car is going to have to understand. But it's just so cute that, so, the bike rider is like moving and it's stationary for a second, and the car like then decided, oh, okay, I arrived here first, I'm going to move forward. And then, of course, the riders, since they're not using their brakes, they eventually have to readjust so they don't fall over, and it moved just a touch. He said like that he moved maybe an inch forward, and the car immediately stopped. And then, they were able to be stationary for another second, the bike rider, and then the car, started moving forward again. And then they unfortunately were losing balance and had to take a small movement forward. And the car immediately came to abrupt stop. And the people that were in the Google car were laughing at, and typing away at the programming to be able to say, okay, this is something that we need to, assess for in the future, that people might be on the bike. And they're also, the way that a Google car knows that it's a bike rider is the difference between where their head is versus the ground. And so because they're upright also, it's at a higher level, because when they're doing this back and forth movement by not using brakes, they're standing. And so it seems like they're also riding at the same time. And so I thought that it was really cute because the person's feet were not on the ground, so they were further off the ground than they would have expected it to be. And so it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with the a Google car, well, a self-driving car, but at least in this case, it was a Google car. They've done a good job with the car assessing, keep people safe.
Well, it makes sense because, the Google car must know that there's better technology in bikes than a fixed gear bike. So why is that person riding a fixed gear bike when the technology exists that is better?
Right.
And then
what
you
is
have to
wrong with them that they cannot stop?
Right. And so you have to explain to the Google car it's cooler to ride a fixed gear bike.
Right. And there's what is happening in this scenario. But you can think about, if we're dealing with a really busy intersection, all of the different variables that are going to be playing at the same time that they're going to have to be, processing for really quickly to make sure that everything's safe. We still have a long way to go, but, I think that it was a point ahead for the cars.
My prediction is that we'll have self-driving technology in time for me not to have to help my children drive their children to soccer practice, as my mom does. So when I have grandkids, a self-driving Uber will drive them wherever they need to go, not me.
That sounds delightful.
It does.
I just would love to go on like a long trip and be able to like read or, just chill out, take a nap, and be able to arrive and be brought there. I can't wait for self-driving cars.
Me too. Well, Georgia,
give up all my data for that.
Oh, okay. Someone just heard that somewhere. Georgia, thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You are at Georgia_Dow on Twitter. You're on iMore, and you have a new series of videos that you have been working on. Let us know what those are.
Yeah, we're doing an at-home treatment plan for people that are dealing with anxiety. And so you can download or order. And what we do is you get one, video that you can watch, and it goes by session. So what a first session would be, what a second session would be, what a third session would be for how to manage anxiety at home. I think for a lot of people, they might be too shy or they can't afford to be able to treat anxiety, that they're dealing with. And it's so treatable. You don't have to deal with this. And 1 in 3 people will have anxiety through their lifetime. And so I thought that it would be, and Sandra Reish, who's the person that does it and runs the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, said, you know what, this would be a wonderful way that you can take us into your home and do it in your own safety and be able to treat your anxiety so that you can live the life that you deserve to live.
Well, it's an excellent use of technology. So that's at anxiety-videos?
Yes, anxiety-videos.com.
Well, thank you so much, Georgia. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
And that is it for this edition of Tech News Tonight. We're on Facebook. You can find us at facebook.com/technewstonight. You can like us to get links to the show when it's posted. I also try to go in there during the day and post articles that we'll be talking about on the show. And if you want to be part of the conversation, you can post a comment on the stories that we post, and we will read them right here. And you can also subscribe to the show at twit.tv/TN2. You can write to us at TN2 at twit.tv. You can also write directly to me if you'd like, Megan at twit.tv. And you can watch live every weekday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And don't miss our morning news program, Tech News Today. That's every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Megan Morrone. Thanks for watching.
Bandwidth for Tech News Tonight is brought to you by CashFly.com.